one of the things that struck me about this whole movement is that the public is not allowed in public spaces. And isn't it time we liberated public spaces? And put them in, and allowed people to have political discussions in public spaces. You know, and I was at the London Occupy on the steps of St. Paul's, and there were lots of open squares there, but none of them could be gone into without actually having the private people come and kick you out. So this is what democracy, as you were saying, looks like. That we have to have open spaces where we can have absolute open discussions about what the hell to do about the immense concentrations of wealth and power, which are totally corrupting the political system, corrupt the judiciary, corrupt the media, corrupt everything, including corrupting university education, and are actually destroying people's lives. So it's time that there was a movement, and this is what is beginning. There's a fantastic movement in Chile. They've occupied the public universities for the last 5 months. 5 months! And you know, and then and along came the government and said, well, we'll give you a little bit more money. They said, no, we want free education, and we want a good education. And it's a human right, and we're going to roll back all this stuff that was imposed by Pinochet and all the rest of it. We've got to roll back all that stuff that was started by Reagan. We've got 30 years of horror to roll back. And it's 30 years of class privilege for the very, very affluent. It's 30 years of discrimination for everybody else. And I think that this is a time now we've got to turn this whole thing around and turn it and move it in the other direction. And you guys are doing it. And the people who went to jail, that's courage. That's courage. And it takes persistence. So let's give a shout to them. I think this is an amazing thing. And of course, one of the things that's immediately evident is, you know, we have these small meetings. You remember when the Tea Party started, they'd have a meeting like this, they'd be on the front, they'd be the front item on Fox News, and you wouldn't see any police around. The police are, oh, this is fine, it's great. And they could walk around with guns and nobody did anything. And we come here and all we do, and just because we're simply in a public space, exercising our constitutional rights of free assembly and free association, and we say, we are against the concentration of wealth and power, what happens? Thousands of police suddenly descend on us and say, oh, you know. And then they do all kinds of other things too. They kind of start saying, well, actually you smell a bit, and you need to be cleaned up or something like that. I mean, you know, this sort of kind of excuses. So what's clear is that the message that is coming up from this movement is dangerous, and it's dangerous to political power, and the danger has to be escalated, and it has to be made consistent. And the other things you got to think about is, you know, one of the things they'll try and do is divide you into factions and kind of say this and that. Well, okay, in any movement you need some divisions of labour, and some people need to take care of this, and some people take care of that. You know, you have a librarian, and then you have a medical, you know, those kinds of things. But the kind of divisions they want is to turn one group against another. And we got to stay solidarious. We've got to stay together. Do not be divided. Do not be divided.
I guess the way I would think of a crisis is as an irrational rationalizer of an irrational system. The irrationality of the system right now is fairly clear. You have masses of capital and masses of labour unemployed, side by side, in the midst of a world which is full of social need. How stupid is that? In January 2008, 2 million people in the United States had lost their homes, and in that month, Wall Street gave itself bonuses of $32 billion, which is only 2% less than the year before, and they gave themselves that bonuses for crashing the world's financial system. I think this is absolutely outrageous. I've just been reading a whole bunch of inquiries, talking to the people who've lost their homes and asking them, who do they blame? You know who they blame? Themselves. There's no capacity to see the systemic nature of what it was that led into this. we have a huge educational task here. The mental conceptions of the world with which people are approaching these questions are absolutely erroneous. The bourgeoisie does things which actually open up possibilities. And those possibilities are things that we need to seize and recognize them, and we have to analyze them and understand them. There's a lot of work to be done here. And I think it's very important that we start to think about how that work is being done here, how it's being done in Egypt, what's going on in Latin America, what our relationship is there. The social movements around the world right now, which are anti-capitalist, are innumerable. The biggest problem is how to somehow or other get that together in some unified conception that can really challenge capitalism worldwide. The rationalization that capital is looking for is, of course, to re-establish the basis for the extraction of surpluses, re-establish the profit rate. The irrational way in which they're going about it is actually to suppress those possibilities by suppressing labor and suppressing, if you like, the circulation of capital. So, I mean, that is what I mean by the irrational rationalizing of an irrational system. As a socialist, however, I think there's another way of rationalizing it, and that is, for me, the big question is how to take all of that capital equipment and all that labor and put it together so it actually meets human needs. That seems to me to be the rationalization we should be looking for right now, and we should be looking for, at a moment of crisis, as a moment of opportunity, to think about the transition to socialism, communism, as one of the answers which we really should be pushing for. What kind of social relations are we talking about in the present, and what kind of social relations will we be working towards? Now, clearly, the question of social relations is not independent of the questions of technology, nor is it independent of the questions of the relation to nature. But the social relations are a very, very complex area in itself, and there's a lot of conflict internally in terms of what kinds of social relations we're looking for. There are questions of class and gender and race and all those other sorts of questions. How are we going to deal with all of that? And the technologies also have a way of actually limiting the possibilities of certain kinds of social relations. For example, I like the idea of having kind of horizontal social relations and lots of communal activity and social relations on that basis. But on the other hand, I'd hate to see an anarchist commune in charge of a nuclear power station. And frankly, since we've got nuclear power stations around right now, it's all very well to say I don't want to have nuclear power, but you've got the damn things and they're going to be around for a very, very long time, and you need a hierarchical structure of social relations with a very quick command and decision-making procedures, unless you're going to have sorts of blow-ups. So in a sense, the technologies you get are not, if you like, independent of the social relations, and the possibilities that exist in terms of social relations are not independent of the technologies.